Hello everybody, it's Claire here from Sewn by Claire, and I've been given some alterations to do. Now, I know that quite a few of you may not like to have alterations to do, but sometimes we have them to do for ourselves or for friends and family, and so I just thought that I would show you how I alter the hems on trousers, just in case any of you haven't done that before. But it's a skill that's really useful to have because it can save you some money if you do get asked to do those sorts of things. So anyway, I consider this really a bit of a skill builder, I suppose. So I'm gonna bill it as that on the title, and hopefully that will be of interest to some people. So here we go. So the person for the trousers has already tried these on, and I've already pinned these up at the required length. It's a little bit haphazard because sometimes it is when they try them on and they're not always straight, but I'll talk to you about how I alter those to make sure that they're straight. Now, traditionally you would hem trousers, so they need to wear the shoes that they're going to wear with the trousers, and then where you've got the heel of the shoe and before where it meets where the actual base of where the heel, so you've got the actual external heel of the shoe, and then you've got the heel of the foot. So where the heel of the foot meets the start of the heel of the shoe, that's where traditionally you would take your trousers down to. You'd get them down to that point there, or a little lower if you wanted them to. On ladies' trousers particularly, you'd take it lower because you want to be able to cover most of the foot and some of the heel, but you just don't really want it dragging on the floor. But on men's shoes particularly, where they don't have a large heel, and it's men's shoes, men's trousers, and that's what I'm altering today, then generally you'll take it down. Let me just go and get one of my husband's shoes and I'll just show you just so that it demonstrates. Hold on one second. Okay, I'm back. So I've got a shoe of my husband's here, just a casual loafer really, and this is the point that I was referring to, this point along here. So if this is the heel of the shoe, whether it's a dress shoe or a casual shoe, and then this is where your heel would fit inside the shoe, then that would be the point to which you would take your trousers down to at the bottom when you're trying them on, and then you'll turn them up and then pin them to that point there. Now, the trouble is that at the moment, fashions come round, if you can get it low enough at the front so that you can get it, if the trouser leg is wide enough that you can get it low enough at the front to make that work well, then that's all fine. But sometimes, and same as on these trousers here, they're incredibly narrow on the hem here, not very much at all. Let's have a look and see what that is for you. That hem is 7 inches across. Okay, so it's 14 inches round, which isn't very big at all. So if somebody was wearing that with a shoe, you can see that it's not going to drop. Sometimes it doesn't drop down on the ankle and the leg because there isn't enough circumference in the bottom of the hem for it to drop down enough for you to be pinned there. So you just then have to pin to wherever the person is comfortable with them having their trousers to, and just make sure that if you get them to sit down in a chair, because men tend to pull them up on their knees, don't they, as they sit down, and have them look in the mirror, just make sure they're happy with that, because once you've cut it off, it's too late. You can't do anything about it. So it's always best to have these conversations before, and that's what we've done with this client. So that's just a few tips on how to determine what is the correct length. Obviously it's all personal preference, and it's all detailed by or determined by fashion as well, but in this case that's what I try to do, especially if they're older gentlemen who aren't really following the fashions. Then I'll take it down to that point on the shoe. If it's somebody who's younger and who's particularly fashion conscious, and I can only get it down to about there because the circumference around the ankle isn't big enough to take it any further down the shoe, rather than having it bunching up the front of the leg, then we'll just have the hem slightly higher so that it just sits nicely. I hope that all makes sense. Right, let's get on to the actual technique. So here we've got our trousers and they've been pinned up, and as you can see the pinning isn't quite straight. Obviously you try and get yours a little bit straighter than this, but what we want to do now is we want to remember the old adage, and that is measure twice, cut once, because if we look in here we've got a couple of inches or so that want to come up off these trousers. And we certainly don't want to make them too short. So what I always try and do is, when I've got them pinned like this, so that I don't sort of forget where I am with what I'm doing, is I run a row of pins along this folded edge just here. So just literally hold it tight with your fingers so you've got that folded edge in your hand, and then just slide a pin along that edge all the way around for where you've marked. Just put some more in. So I'm not taking out the existing pins, they're already in there. I'm just marking this edge first. The reason I'm not making it more permanent than this at the moment is, and you'll see why in a minute, is because we're going to just do a little bit of hand basting, just to give ourselves the best chance of success. Now, especially if you're doing these for people that it's not a family member, or you sort of have got a little bit of leeway. They're not going to be cross with you if you damage them or take them too short, then you'll be better off. But just for now, we're going to assume that they're precious trousers and we want to be careful with them. So, okay, so now that I've put those pins in, now I'm going to take out the existing one. That stops me then from getting confused with where I'm putting my pins in and how far round I've got. Not that one, nearly. So only 3 pins in to hold that down. So then we fold open the trouser that we're working on, and we can see a line here, and then we can see the line across the back here. So let's just orientate ourselves on the trousers as well. So these are higher at the front and lower at the back. Now I am going to level this off with the lowest point because I don't want to lose too much back here. So I'm going to take my seam gauge, which is here, and then I'm going to have a look and see where we are on here. So if we go down from this pin here down to the bottom of the hem, it's 2.5 inches. Down from this pin here down to the bottom is just over 3, so nearly 3.5. So what we're doing is just double checking where we are. So that's just under 2.5, just over 2.5, 2 3/4 possibly. That's 2.5. That's 2 1/4. And that's probably about just over 2. So I'm going to take these now. Now you can have higher at the back or higher at the front and lower at the back. That's absolutely a thing as well. But for these ones, I am going to look, so that's 2.5. Comes down just a little bit lower here, doesn't it? That's 2. I think I'm going to take 2 inches off these, and I will be happy with that, because I'd rather them come back and we need to make them a little bit higher, little bit shorter, than I would have them too short. So I'm going to take 2 inches off this. Now, if you've got a piece of paper and a pen, make a note as well. So where's my notepad? Here. So we're going to do the -2 inches plus the hem, because we need to have a look and see what the hem is doing, the existing hem, because that's going to help us and see what we need to do with this. So because it's a bit dark, let me just see if I can get some more light on. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so hopefully this should be a little bit better now. So what I want to do is, excuse the cars going past, is look at the existing hem. So, sorry, that's, yes. So on here, I can see we've got 3/4 inch of the existing hem from there to there, and that's double. So I always match the same hem as has been on the trousers. So this one's is turned over double, and also it's been machine stitched down. So sometimes they're overlocked and then they're just sort of tacked up, but on this one they've been turned over twice and then stitched down. So that's what I'm going to do on these ones. So we know that these are 3/4 inch hem on them. So 2 times 3/4 inch for the first turn, and the second is 1.5 inches. So I've made that down. We're going to actually take off 2 inches because that was our lowest point, wasn't it, if you remember? So we're going to take off 2 inches, but we need to allow, so we want 2 inches to the finished hem, but we then want to allow for our hem, for our double turn up of 0.75 of an inch each time. So we need to leave 1.5. So in that respect then we're going to take off 1/2 inch off the existing hem, and then that should then give us enough to work with. Okay, So the other thing that we can do now whilst we're working with this, just to make sure it's right, is if I find some thread of a different colour, is that a different colour enough? Yes. Is I would recommend that we thread based. And I know it's an extra step, but it just takes away that doubt for you as to whether or not you've done it to the right length. So I'm just at the moment getting a needle and thread together off camera, but I can do it on camera. So what I am going to do is at 2 inches I am going to put a little pencil mark. Got a nice pencil to use, which is this one by Soline. So it's just a chalk pencil with a like a propelling nib to it, and I'm going to measure up from the hem 2 inches and then mark it. That's what I'm doing. Literally just 2 inches up and then just marking a line like that with my pencil. Okay. Because we already know these are going to be shorter for this client anyway. And the client can be any person really that you're sewing for. I'm not talking about paying customers. So if they wanted to pay you in cake, that or wine, that would be quite nice, wouldn't it? Right, okay. So just mark that down. So when that's not a cutting line that we've marked, that's the finished hem line that we've just marked. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take my thread and needle and I'm just going to run a big running stitch just along on that line. It really is just a line, just for reference, just to tell you, just to say to you, it's okay, you've not taken it shorter than you should have done, because that tacking line is still there. This is your double check line. Let me just run round with this. As I say, it doesn't take long, but it'll save your sanity, believe me, and save you waking up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my God, did I take off 2 inches? Did I take off 4 inches? Because I have done that. And no pair of trousers is worth losing your sleep over. Unless you want to be up in the middle of the night making them, of course. Right, so I've just overlapped the edge just there, on the edge. Just snip my thread here, okay. So we'll now take out these pins, because these pins were up and down a bit, so we don't want to be using those as a guide. They were just the rough guide when we were trying them on the client, just to make sure that they were the right head length. So we pencil marked it and we've just gone over that with thread now, and that'll pull out so easily once we've finished. Now that isn't your cutting line, that's your finished hem line, okay? So we can do the same on the other one. Oh, I'll just do one leg for you, but you repeat the process for the second leg. So now what I'm going to do now is going to measure down 1.5 inches from that line there and make another mark, pencil mark, because this is going to be our cutting line. And you would be doing this flat on your work surface rather than in your hand like I am, but I'm wanting you to be able to see what I'm doing. So although it looks like we're taking off a very, very small amount, and we are literally just the existing hem, we're then going to take this amount here up with actually turning up our hem. So we are taking up more than it looks like, and that's where sometimes people can get unstuck with hems, because they do sometimes take up more than they should and not account for that existing hem. The reason why I mirror the existing hem is because we know from making design choices ourselves on garments that sometimes a lot of thought and effort goes into how the fabric lays and how it works. So actually all the hard work's been done for you. So that's why I literally do just copy what's already been done. So now I'm just going to snip up to the top here. Okay, so just one snip just to start us so we can cut in the round. And then I'm now going to follow my chalked lines and just take off what we need to take off of the bottom bottom of these trousers. Just take your time. This isn't a time to be rushed. Okay, we're back to the beginning again. Now, so we can just throw that bit away. Sometimes I save it if it's a decent amount of fabric, but on these it isn't. Now, just be aware that if you pull at the sides of these hems, they're going to pull away. So what I would do now is just pull your seam allowances together. And if you, especially if you've got only a short hem, you can then put a couple of stitches on your machine in the same colour, just there, in order to hold that, reinforce the end of that seam. And again, on this bit just here. So you've got there's two seams, the outside leg and the inside leg, and that would what I would do. However, on here, we're going to be turning this up on our tacked line, and so the end of that isn't going to have any pressure on, because we're going to fold our hem into our tacked line first, like that. So I've just taken the cut edge that I've just done and folded it up to my tacked line that I can see, and then I'm going to fold it over again, making sure I don't extend it anymore. And then I'm going to pin it. Okay, so let's just go on to the other side now. So again, I'm going to fold this up to the existing tacked line that we've just tacked, the finished hem length that we want, and then I'm going to turn it up again and then pin it. Now I tend to go to the quarters now, so then I have those two bits at the side, and then I'm going to do this bit just here. It's usually around where the pleat is, or the fold is on the front leg. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to stack up this, so it's a bit dark to see, but there's a hem, there's the seam along here, and you try and match up this point here, this bit on the inside, with where that seam is on the edge just here as well. So that's where it's been neatened off on the edges, and the seam is just in there next to that white thread. So that matches up nicely. That way you don't get a skew with hem on your trousers. So again here, we're going to fold it up to our tack line, and then fold it over again to make sure that tack line's right on the bottom, and then we're going to pin. And then go over to the other quarter. Oh, trouser legs are getting tangled. And do the same again. Now these are so narrow that I think that probably 4 pins will probably do it. So again, up to the tacked edge, and then over again, and then we can then just put a pin in. So once we've finished, if we look at the end of these trousers, we can see that that tacked edge is pretty much, and okay, we can just alter it just there, look at slightly off there, but pretty much on the edge of those trousers, so we can be confident that we're in the right place. So next, just make any alterations you need to make sure that these are stacking up nicely and even. It was just there as well, wasn't it, where I just thought it was off slightly. Okay. So there we go. So there's one leg ready to be done. So what I would do now is I would go ahead and do the other leg, because what you don't want to do is finish one and then forget which one you've done and which one you haven't. You can measure them by the inseam. So if you go right up to the crotch, up here, and fold it over, and then follow the seam of your trousers down on each leg, like this. You can make sure that you've got your trousers at the right height. So that's something that you can do to make sure that that works. So the next thing I'm going to do now is go on to my next trouser leg. Now remember, we haven't got any tacked line to work to on this, but we can put one in. So we know that we went up 2 inches from the hem. So let's go up the 2 inches on the hem, do our line. Sorry you can't see, and I keep stabbing myself with the pins. Occupational hazard that is, isn't it? I think as well it's just nice to know a way to double check yourself as well, so that you don't take too much off, because remember you can't add it back on again, or it's very easy, you know, obviously you'd have to have a slightly shorter hem. You could take them down a bit, but sometimes it's nice just to have that way of double checking yourself. So that's our edge there. Let's just do a tacked edge with that one. Okay, so I've now got both of my hems folded up to the tacked line. I've got them pinned as well. Also, just remember that if you're in two minds as to how high, always go for the lower length, so keeping the trousers as long as possible, but still taking up enough. Because you can always just slightly alter the hem if you needed to, or you can almost take them up more. But if you've taken them up too short to start off with, and you've not got much of your hem to play with, then you're going to cause yourself a problem. So err on the side of caution on these alterations if you can do. The other thing I was going to say is about thread as well. So on here, I've got this navy thread, which is a good match. But the general rule of thumb is that if you haven't got a thread that matches perfectly, you're better off going one or two shades darker than you are one or two shades lighter. So just bear that in mind. Say if you've got a green or a rust or a red, then it's generally considered that just go that slightly little bit darker will be a better match than going lighter. Okay, let's get on to sewing. So we're just going to position our fabric under our presser foot, and we could just lift it up like this, put our fabric under our presser foot, move our needle across closer to the edge of our presser foot just there. So if I just lift that up slightly and get my awl so I can point things for you. So we could also, so towards this edge of the presser foot here, because what I generally try and do is just edge that line up there up of the folded edge of the hem up with the edge on here, and then do a few stitches in, and that gives us a nice hem nice and close to the edge of here. We don't want to be halfway down here when we're sewing, because otherwise this edge here would keep flicking backwards. So you're trying to sew up here towards the edge of this hem just here. The other way you can set up your machine is, well, there's several different ways, but one of them is to remove the base and give yourself your free arm. And if your trousers will fit over the edge, and these ones will, then again you can put this over the top and work this through. So depending on which way round you're doing it, whether you're sewing it from the inside or the outside, you need to alter your pins so that you're not got your pins invisible. If I was sewing from the outside, I'd turn my pins round onto this side. So it just depends on what you're doing with that. So yeah. So I'm gonna sew from the inside and keep my base on. I will do a skill builder on a blind hem as well, but at the moment we're just going to sew this as it was. We're not going to add any extra time onto this one. So let's take the pins out so that we can position this first one. So I'm going to position my stitch on there, and these pins are going the wrong way. So again, make sure that you're working towards the point, sewing towards the point of your pin, because if you sew towards the ball end of the pin, you will then cause problems with when you're running onto it. Okay, so the other thing that I'm going to do now as well is I'm going to extend my stitch up to a 3.5. So I tend to have a longer stitch when I'm top stitching as well. So we can always make sure, because we've got our tacked edge thread on the edge, so we know whether we're right or not. I'm just going to position this now. So let's move the needle across as well a little bit. So let's watch that needle and you'll see it jump across. Wrong way. This way, and we want it towards the edge. So we've only got a fine lip on the top there. That's about right. That's set up at 0.5 in the width and 3.5 on the length. And now I'm just going to take a couple of stitches forward. I'm starting on a side seam as well. Take your speed down as well. This isn't a time for zooming. Okay, and then we're going to keep an eye on where this is lining up on here, because we still want this line around the hem to be even as well. And if you finish with your needle and your work, then every time you stop to readjust your fabric, you won't get a jig in your stitches, because everything will line up perfectly. Just take time just to line everything up. Off we go again. Just do this at a time, and then just reposition your work again. Coming up to this next one, so I won't take out that pin just yet because we're a little way away from it. So as soon as it starts to interfere with the presser foot, remove it. Alter your fabric, as I say, your work, but your fabric in front of you. Take your time over the bumps. If you need to use a hump jumper, then you can. These ones aren't too bad, but on denim you might need that, and that's what this little black button, well, you can't see it at the moment, let me just take that needle out. There's a little black button here. If you hold that in as you start stitching, when you go towards a hump, it will stop this presser foot from moving up or down. And then let you carry on. Let me just put that back down again. So many tips I want to tell you, I keep forgetting what they are. And again, just keep that fabric nice and flat. Just make sure you've got no crumples or wrinkles or little bits lifting up in the middle of it. Into the next little bit. We're almost at the beginning again. This is where we started, so we're just going to go over where we started, a couple of stitches back, and we can take our work out and cut our threads. I always try to start on the inside hem, because then if you get that little bit where you've got your threads overlapping, that's just hidden on the inside hem rather than it being on the outside of the leg. Let me just move my sewing machine out of the way. And so here we are, we've got our nicely sewn hem there. And now if we just pull on one end of the thread stitch in, that just comes straight out like that. And then the next thing that I would do is take this over to the ironing board, and I would press from the inside, and I would always use a press cloth as well. So I think anybody who's watched me before knows that I like silk organza. This one's had an overlocked edge. But I would just pop that, so put your trousers on the ironing board, pop the silk organza just inside there, and then use your hot iron on this part here. Just gently, you don't need to do too much, you're just trying to flatten that seam a little bit just so it doesn't look quite so bubbly. And then there you go, there's your trousers done. So then you can go off and do the other ones, and as I say, if these need taking up any more, then we can do. We've not been over generous with taking them up, but we've also given ourselves the best chance of success with that tacked line, so that we know that we were on the right track with the finished hem length. Okay everybody, I hope that helps anyway, and hope it gives you some confidence if you have to take any trousers up at all. Thank you for watching. If you've liked this video, then please feel free to subscribe to my channel, as I do try to pop up anything that I think is going to be useful to you, as well as the lunar lapping videos. There's dressmaking, and I also do my cross stitch as well, and sometimes quilting. So hopefully there's a bit of something for everybody. Have a great day everybody, and I hope you've enjoyed watching. Thank you.